As we move into the latter stages of this year's Tour de France, memories are fading quickly of the number of high-speed, nervous crashes which littered the first week of racing.
Yeah, the question still remains though, why were there so many crashes in that first week? Because after all, in the field, you've got 200 of the world's finest, most skilled professionals.
Yeah, well, a quick look at this very interesting line graph from Killian Kelly on Twitter reveals that actually after stage 6, there weren't really any more abandons than any other edition in the modern era of the Tour de France. And since abandons are quite often completely related to the number of crashes, I think we can speculate that there were no more crashes really than normal. So the question is, why are there generally so many crashes at the Tour de France in the first week? Right, well, one of the first reasons that I can think of is actually something that you already alluded to at the start of the video, and that is that we have got 200 of the best riders in the world in the race. And not only are they the best and most powerful riders in the world, but they are also on top form. So if you put all of that together, we've got 200 guys who are all very capable of fighting for position. That makes everything so much closer at the front of the peloton, particularly as they come into some crucial moments in the race. And it only takes a very slight overlap of wheels, one person to go down, and that will give a rippled or domino effect and bring a lot of riders down.
I think you're right, but what fuels that? Obviously the riders are in great condition, they're focusing on the Tour de France because of how important it is, but they've pretty much everybody's got the same instructions coming from their respective DS, stay at the front. Then of course that's amplified on the road when they've got it in their ears, especially coming towards the back end of the race. But even at the beginning, you've got the constant message from all the DSs to all of the riders, the domestiques and the team leaders included, to stay near the front. And it basically just self-perpetuates, and the bunch gets faster and faster as the riders constantly try and move up around the outside, like you say, creating a dynamic, quick and dangerous situation.
Yeah, and I think you're right about the pressure, but that pressure from the teams does seem to be increasing, and probably the pressure that the riders put on themselves. And a big part of the reason for that could well be the fact that there's such a disproportionate advantage to doing well at the Tour de France versus other races. So win a classification or a stage there, your salary is likely to go up a lot in comparison if you did the same at another Grand Tour, and equally you get a lot of exposure for your team and sponsors, so the pressure really comes from them as well. Okay, next point which I would like to make is the fact that the first week can be characterised really by flat roads. Now we've talked about the fact that the rides are at such a good level, but there are differing power to weight ratios, which means that once they hit the mountains, we do see a big separation of groups, and therefore there's less likelihood of that big mass pile-up. Whereas in that first week of racing, everyone is very capable of being up there towards the front, fighting for position, staying in very close proximity, and we also don't have a hierarchy by that point in the race. Almost every rider believes in their own chances.
No, definitely. I think add into the mix as well the fact that they're fresh and super motivated to make an impression and look after their sprinter or their team leader. I think one thing we definitely can't ignore though, Dan, is simply aerodynamics. Riders now are far more efficient. They are going faster for free. They've got quicker bikes. There's a proliferance now of aerodynamic frames. If you look at the deep section rims in combination now with slightly wider tyres, they're proven to go quite a lot quicker too. Add to the mix aerodynamic clothing, and then aero helmets. And again, you've got far less margin for error basically. They're going faster for free.
Yeah.
Add that with all the other factors we've already talked about, and it's, again, it makes it...
Yeah, much less time to react if something does happen. Anyway, probably enough of myself and Matt prattling on because we don't really know what we're talking about. But somebody that does, I interviewed at the Tour de France very recently. Well, we have the pleasure of being joined by the General Manager of BMC, Jim Ochowicz, who has been quite outspoken recently on this subject. We're basically trying to find out why there are so many crashes specifically at the Tour de France.
Look, the peloton is much stronger as a group than it's been in the past. And you have 200 riders that take the start at the Tour de France. And really what's happened is the roads have changed a bit. When they reconstruct the road surface, their intention is to make the road better, but also to slow traffic down. So there's more speed bumps, there's more road furniture, they call it, whatever you want to call it, on the roads themselves that weren't there 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and there may be more stuff out there a year from now that we don't even know about. The only solution to that problem, because we're not going to reconstruct the roads ourselves, is, and that's our stadium, is that we can only reduce the size of the pelotons. I don't know what the magic number is, but I do know that we have to reduce the number from 200 riders down to something more manageable.
And would you think that that is a case of reducing the number of teams or the number of riders per team?
This is our sport. We do it with 9 people. So I don't think you can make it 8 or 7. We do it with 9 because there's jobs for 9 people. I think it has to come from a reduction in the number of teams that are selected for the race.
Yeah, and you touched on a point earlier about the spread of teams across the road. That's a dynamic which seems to have changed in the last 5 years or so. I mean, very rarely in the past did we have an overhead shot where it would be teams all in one line spread across the road at that kind of speed.
We did it with Cadel Evans in
So it's your fault.
2011. Possibly. We did it in 2011 when Cadel won, and it worked for us. You know, we put some really strong bulldozers, we call them, in front just to hold the line and keep an easier pace for Cadel to follow. And now other teams have followed the same strategy in the early part of the race.
Jim, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Cheers.
So, there you have it. Some reasoning into why perhaps there are so many crashes in the Tour de France. But perhaps, Dan, it's just our perception. There's so much reportage, and you've got all the social media platforms. Maybe it's just the way we look at things.
Yeah, that is true. We've got the onboard footage, of course, this year. So not only are we seeing those crashes whilst the stage is on live or in highlights, but we're also on YouTube seeing loads of onboard footage of crashes as well. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. This has been one of our Tour de France content videos, and we've got loads more that's all in one playlist handily for you. And you can find that by clicking just up there. However, one of my personal favourites, Matt, is top 10 facts of the Tour de France.
That was a pearl,
That's
wasn't it?
Real pearl, yeah. You wrote that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, you can find that by clicking just down there.
Or you can double click them now and see it twice.
I don't know if double clicking on that works.
Doesn't it? Does that shut
You
the
might
window?
have to refresh the page.
Oh, don't do that. Do what Dan said initially. So just rewind this bit and then stop it just after Dan said what he said.
Yeah.
And if you're still here, click on us to subscribe to GCN. It's absolutely free.
Yeah.
Tell your mates.
Don't think they're still here, Matt.
Brilliant.